In this video today, I'm going to talk about a trip that I'm now offering, which is photographing jaguars and a whole bunch more in the Pantanal, Brazil. So let's start off, we'll just talk about the trip overall, a little bit of the itinerary. After we land and the transfer flight over, we take a van ride to the first place where we stay. The van we have is very comfortable, plenty of room for everybody. We run these trips in relatively small groups, anywhere from 4 to 6 people. So plenty of space to stretch out, very comfortable ride. And the first place that we stay is one of 2 different pousadas. This year we stayed in this one here. Next year's trip may be a different one, but they're both very similar. But it's a very modest place, but very nice. My favorite thing about this location is the pool guests here, the blue and yellow macaws. These blue and yellow macaws were reintroduced into this area and they're thriving here, which is awesome to see. So after we get settled in, we head out for our first afternoon drive in search of our first target species, which is the giant anteater. And basically what we do is we drive around all the privately owned land. We have access to all of it until we spot the anteaters. And then at that point, you can get out on foot and you can walk with them. You can actually get pretty close to them. You know, we move in slow, deliberate movements, but they're pretty blind and deaf, basically. They kind of just go about their business. Not too easily spooked for the most part, again, as long as you're deliberate in your movements. They can at times be a little bit tricky to spot. We did strike out the first time, but then it was pretty hot in the afternoon. Actually, it was extremely hot in the afternoon, which most likely led to them not really being out and visible that afternoon. But the following mornings, we had a lot more luck in the morning sessions. Both times we went out in the mornings, we were able to find them. We got some pretty great shots, good light and everything. My favorite part about this place was, besides the anteaters, was the feeders. All kinds of different macaws here, hyacinth, blue and yellow, I should say parrots. Different parrots, parakeets, toucans, just birds everywhere, coming and going from the feeders, up in the trees, you know, eating whatever fruits were blossoming or whatever you want to call it in the trees, blooming, blossom, I guess it's fruiting. But anyway, yeah, whatever fruits were fruiting, that would make more sense, huh? But yeah, we had a lot of luck with all the different birds around the property, and I got some really great shots. I was really happy. I was able to get the toucans feeding up in the tree. They don't come to the feeders quite as much where we were staying here, but I was happy to at least get toucans here. That was one of my definite target species here. So after the stay here, we're transported several hour drive, again, very comfortable. We make a nice stop in the afternoon for lunch, and we relaxed, had a nice little midday nap before heading to what is arguably my favorite spot here. Even though this is a jaguar trip, this sinkhole here is famous for the macaws that live here. There are just tons of red and green macaws that live here. And this location has 2 different platforms, one for the morning, one for the afternoon, so that you're always in good light. And I'll come back to the light in a second. But first I want to talk about another thing that was really cool here is it's all red and green macaws, except there's one blue and yellow macaw that seems for the last couple of years to now be a pair with one of the green and red macaws, red and green. And I was able to get a couple shots of them together, not as many as I wanted. I really like this shot because I like the way that their wings were interlocked when they were landing. And then, again, as I mentioned, the light. So what's really cool here is these macaws fly through so many different lighting situations here. So you get them in great light with a great light on the background. You get them in even light in the shade. You can get them with light just on the bird, but the bottom of the sinkhole is just completely blacked out with shade. So you can see just as you watch as they fly through, I mean, there's just so many different combinations of light here that you can do that really give you some unique shots. I just absolutely love this spot. It was so cool. There were so many macaws, literally tens of thousands of photos. And quick shout out to the Canon R1. Boy, it really nailed the focus on these birds. I've heard people talk about, some of their cameras struggling. I'm not bashing other brands, but I was a little nervous coming here originally that it was going to be difficult, but the R1, not an issue, no problems whatsoever. Another cool thing is I got this laughing falcon here. As you can hear him calling here, I've been trying to get these birds for years in Costa Rica. I just never have had a lot of luck with them. So that was a nice bonus on top of everything else. At the end of the day, the first day, we drove through a really cool little town called Bonito. We stayed here overnight, went out to dinner, and then the following morning, we were right back with the Macaws again. What makes our trip unique is we're one of the few that are able to do both the North and the South Pantanal. Because of the location where we stay, where the Jaguars are, we have our own airstrip, so we're able to charter our own plane, and this allows us to do the birding portion of the trip, and then we can fly, and we literally land. The airstrip is right on the property of the lodge where we're staying, Porto Joffre Lodge, which is awesome. You get out, you're right there. As you can see, it's it's not the most high-tech runway in the world, but it does the job. And then we're transported over to our rooms. The rooms are very modest, but nothing super fancy, but they're just fine. They do the job. Air conditioning, clean, no problems. Again, basic, but we're not really here for the room, so who really cares? So once we got settled in, first afternoon, we're hitting the water right away. We go out in a boat where we have enough rows where, unless you're a couple and you want to sit together, typically everybody has their own row, which is nice. And the big thing is we alternate seats every shoot, so you're never stuck in one position. And right away, we were able to find some Jaguars on the first drive, and we got a couple cool scenes of this guy who was really irritated by the bugs. Who was kind of rolling around trying to get the flies off of him. Bugs weren't really an issue for us for the most part. It was actually pretty good. I was surprised. I thought it'd be a lot worse. So some of my favorite sightings are the Jaguars in the trees. They really love trees, and we got quite a few of them up in the trees. This one after, I guess this was this was the last morning actually, of the trip this year. This guy was really just showing off in the tree, gave us a whole bunch of different looks. The lighting was perfect, and it was great. And these Jaguars are pretty tolerant for the most part, so we're pretty close to this. I'll come back to that again when I get to the gear section of this video. Just want to talk a little bit more about this sighting here. But anyway, so that night, back at the lodge, Porto Joffre Lodge here, these were my everyday guests. They were coming down, or neighbors, I guess you could say. This whole, I don't know what you call a group of capybara. I don't know, is it a herd? Whatever they are. They all moved through past my room every night. They were heading down to the river. So that was pretty neat. I enjoyed seeing them every day. Early mornings, I think, are my favorite part of the trip. I love being out on the boat. It's still a little bit cool yet, and the sunrises are always beautiful. And on this particular morning, I didn't know it yet, but it was going to be one of my best photography days ever, in my opinion. We were able to get a Jaguar kill with a really, really big caiman. And I know this is the thing that everybody wants to get all the time, but there's so much to kills and hunting in general with the Jaguars that makes this difficult. Number one, obviously, it's a matter of right place, right time. Two, it needs to be a hunt where they are out in the open. So many times they're hunting through the hyacinth, which makes it very difficult to get them clean shots of them. And they typically want to drag their prey back to the bush and hide it and eat there, all the while always tending to be facing away from you. So to get this kill out in the open facing us was just amazing. And seeing just the brute strength of this animal as it drug this massive caiman out of the water, I mean, it was unbelievable. And, we were high-fiving when this was over, and everybody couldn't wait to edit that night. We stayed at dinner here a little late, and we were editing photos and just kind of had a couple of celebration drinks after that day. So cool. And as I headed back to my room that night, Another capybara came by, but this time with 3 little tiny babies, which was super cute. So as far as the jaguars and the kills go, like I said, it's just about managing expectation. You can't go in expecting to see that. Is there a probability of it happening? Yes, but again, you need to be in the right place, right time, or have a tremendous amount of patience. You just need to wait for it to happen, not want to be moving all around. But there's a lot more here to see than just jaguars. There's caiman, there's capybara, there's as many birds as you can imagine. But actually, before I even get into that, the capybara, they love to be on these beaches out in the open. I think they feel a little bit safer because the jaguars can't sneak up on them as easily, so they're always out on the beaches. One of the mornings, we got a tapir swimming. Again, another animal I've never had a lot of luck with in Costa Rica, despite being there many, many times. And then another one of my favorite animals here is the giant river otters. Another extremely frustrating animal to photograph because it seems like every time they get a fish to eat, they want to turn away from you. But as I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of bird life here. Hyacinth macaws, all different types of heron, kingfishers. The amount of kingfishers that we saw, and me being from the US where you can't normally get within 100 yards of a belted kingfisher, we were rowing right up to ringed kingfishers, Amazon kingfishers, pygmy kingfishers. There's one more that I'm forgetting. Green kingfishers. They were just everywhere. It was unbelievable. It was so hard to not want to stop for every single one of them because we were focused on the jaguars. There's the Jabiru storks, again, the tapir, cormorants eating all over the place, and hingas. We got a leucistic caracara. That was cool. I mean, as many caiman as you can imagine photographing. So, and again, the capybaras. So definitely a wide variety of things here. It's not just jaguar heavy. So weather. It did rain one of the days, even though this is dry season, although it seems to be my luck and the theme of this year of every trip I'm going on, where I say it's not going to rain because it's the dry season, and then it rains. But whatever. It was only one day. Still managed to get out. Still got some shots. And eventually the rain would stop. So it is what it is. So next, let's talk about gear. I brought 600 f4, a 400 f4, and the 100 to 500. If you watch any of my other videos, you can imagine what I'm about to say. I shot the 100 to 500 most of the time. I really wanted to use my 600, but too often we were just too close. It's really common. These jaguars are very habituated for the most part, so you're getting up pretty close to them, a lot closer than I was expecting. I did use I opted for my 400 f4 over my 400 2.8 because I didn't want to bring 400 2.8, 600 f4, and 100 to 500. The 400 f4 is a lot smaller than the 400 2.8. In hindsight, I may have ditched the 600 and just went 100 to 500 and 400 2.8. I don't know. I'm not sure. I could never make up my mind on that. The sweet spot seems to be in the 300 to 400 range very often. But then again, if you want small birds, you want more reach. So it's always a toss-up. There's no right answer to that. My suggestion is typically a zoom if you can swing that. If you have one, if you have primes, it's a crapshoot between 400 and 600. So, all right. So the last thing I'm going to talk about here is the elephant in the room, which you may or may not know is the amount of boat traffic here. I don't want to lead with this because I don't want it to seem like a negative, even though it kind of is a negative. In a way, it's not, for a couple of reasons. Yes, there were times that it looked like this. But that said, that seemed to be when it was slow. At most times, there tends to be more than 1, 2, maybe 3 sightings going on at the same time. So all these boats get spread out. But with some weird weather, we had a couple days that were slower. So it seemed like, there would be one sighting. So of course everybody was going there. Now, that said, as my friend who was on the trip with me, Dennis Stogstill, said, does this affect my shooting? And 99% of the time, it really doesn't. As long as you just focus on the cat, the other boats don't really bother you. You can get drawn, if you're sitting and waiting on a sighting, you can get drawn into focusing on what people are talking about around you or watching the other boats kind of jockey for position, things like that. But a typical sighting is normally these cats are walking the beach and they can go for a pretty far distance. So you're constantly moving, you're kind of leapfrogging the other boats. And like I said, yeah, of course, there's going to be some times where they're in your way, but it never really ruined anything for me. So put it that way. So you have to just go in with the mindset. Kind of reminds me of the Great Migration. If you've ever been there, if you happen to see my video on that, you just have to go in knowing there's going to be other people there. I'm not going to focus on them. I'm not going to let it affect my shooting. And if there's several sightings at the same time, this really isn't an issue. Like I said, it seemed to be worse because we had a couple, I would call them slower days. I wouldn't, whatever. It's not every single time you're out there, you're going to be surrounded by 100 boats. There are times where you can find, if you find your own cat, we found one or two this year where we were the ones that found it. So of course you're the only one there. Now the benefit to where we stay, it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Our lodge has the most rooms, therefore we have the most boats on the water. So we're always getting the calls from the other boats, when there's a sighting. So that helps us. But in return, of course, we have to make the call to let everybody else know as well. It's only fair. So again, we actually only got the kill because somebody called us and told us, get over here, there's a jaguar hunting. So we rushed over and we were able to get it. So I look at the things like that totally outweigh the negatives of, there's a big group of boats here. But anyway, overall, this trip, never in a million years would I have imagined me saying anything would come close to Africa, but this does. In my opinion, this is unbelievable. What I like here more about Africa is when you go to Africa, if you're looking for cats, the majority of the time, if you're not finding them right at sunrise or sunset, you're not getting much, they're sleeping. These cats wait for the heat of day, 100 degrees sometimes, because the caiman are coming out to sun themselves, and that's when these cats are getting active. So they're out. You can find them at any point during the day, all day, which is amazing. And again, so much diversity to shoot here. It's unbelievable. So if you'd like to join me, the link will be in the description down below. And I hope to see some of you there. And thank you so much for watching this video. As always, I greatly appreciate it.